Alright lads, so the next set of limit breaking quests have officially been announced. We did briefly talk about it during our prediction video for the end of the month, as these now do get posted a day earlier, right? So we get to know, considering that slot 1 is always designed for an end of month character, we get to know now a day in advance what type of character we are about to receive for the upcoming end of month banner. In this case though, for this upcoming month's limit breaking quest, which is released on July 1st, we have slot number 1, where we want to bring a technique of rank killer, or in this case we're actually forced to bring a technique character. They want to be melee, as they then get a 2x damage buff. With a rank killer, they then get an 8x killer effect, and we want them to be immune to freeze, although to be fair, the freeze pools might be a tad bit forgiving. I don't think you need to really worry about rule number 4. Just dodge it, I think you'd be fine. Obviously, slot number 1 is designed for us to bring someone like the new swimsuit Bambietta, and unfortunately, at least from memory right now, we are about to check the album. I'm really not sure what good substitute would be good here. You know, when Rangika was the limit breaker character of the month a few months back, she was a ranged rank killer, and you didn't need to pull for her. You didn't need her. 1000 Year Blood War Aizen existed and was equally, if not better, than Rangiku. So Bambietta this time around might be a tad bit more needed, but in slot number 2, we want to bring a power holo killer, and by bringing a power character, we are getting a 2x damage output. If they are melee, they're getting another 2x damage output, and then if they do have holo killer, the killer effect is multiplied by 5. So overall, very easy to fulfill. In this case, we can basically just bring 1000 Year Blood War Yamamoto, but most importantly, if you did pull on the recent 9th anniversary celebration banner, we of course do have the 9th anniversary renewed Mugetsu. He is going to be easily best in slot for slot 2, and then slot 3, we can bring another technique character, and if they are ranged, they are getting a 2x damage output. The first character that comes to my mind right now, of course, is Quincy Ichigo. If you have him, it makes Bambietta even better, because then Quincy Ichigo is giving the recharge in between stages. So right now, I'll say right from the get-go, I think this is the best team that comes to mind. Obviously, Mugetsu's best in slot 2, Bambietta's best in slot for slot 1, and then Quincy Ichigo will be serviceable in slot 3, but the fact that he is giving the recharge in between stages makes it even better for Bambietta's playtime. If you have this team and have yet to get the challenge where you can get a platinum medal for reaching stage 25 in any limit breaker quest, this might be a good time to actually do it. So as always, actually, before we do, lads, this is a complete detour of what we are talking about today, but I finally got him. Where is he? I finally got Lige. It only took me like 4+ years, 3.5 years. I'm not sure how long it's been, but since he's now a character pack, I've got it, and I finally have this character. And with that, I now actually own every character in the year 2020. I believe it's 2020. Yeah, 2020. Either way, so first slot, we want to bring a technique character. They want to be melee, and they want to, of course, have an Aranka killer. Now, I believe we have a few characters. No, we do not. Slot 1 is going to be tough. Slot 1 is going to be very, very tough here. I don't think there's a single character worth talking about here. Truthfully so, I really don't. Like, you could maybe make a case for someone like Tsukishima and Grimmjow. This one might be decent, but I think with the current limit breaker quest where they have quite a lot of HP, more than usual, I don't think Grimmjow's really going to work here. If you have him max transited, maybe it will be enough to get to stage 20, stage 19 mainly, but slot 1 is definitely going to be a problem for a lot of people, mainly due to the fact that, of course, you know, Bambietta being a melee Aranka killer, we haven't had any of those in quite some time for this attribute, which is why Bambietta is specifically those two combinations, melee and also Aranka killer. What we can do is our next best thing, just bring a melee technique character, and in that case, again, your doors open up a tad bit. Ichibe, for example, would be maybe decent enough to bring here, but if we have a look at specifically technique characters only, that are, of course, melee, disregarding killer, well then in this case, you have a few decent options. I think one of your better ones are always going to be Ichibe, right? Really high damage output, especially when the gauge is active, and if you are bringing someone like Quincy Ichigo as your third character in slot number 3, it will allow Ichibe to spam his strong attacks and therefore keep the gauge more often than not. There, of course, will be a lot of downtime during the stages where the enemies are really tanky, the poise enemy stage, but you can apply weakening. His Sobum has weakened defense too, so if you need to use your Sobum on his stage, you might actually want to do that. Overall, still a really good character despite that very big drawback weakness. When the gauge isn't active, his damage is low, but when it is active, man, is it really, really good. So I think for me personally, Ichibe is going to be my go-to if I don't pull Bambietta. And if you have Ichibe, he might also be your go-to, unless of course you own someone like Spirits Off and with you Untold Stories Toshiro. In this case, still good enough, right? Melee, good damage output, Frenzy +1, 80% SP boost. When the gauge activates, it will then get an additional 100% Berserker. And if you apply freeze, you know, it will be lasting the full duration. The enemies will be frozen in place. Might be an easy time, but definitely will still be slower when compared to someone like Bambietta, because again, she's getting all the damage buffs She's getting all the damage buffs here. And unironically, again, out of all the technical characters, she's the only character here that is going to get all the buffs. So clear time in comparison to Bambietta is going to be night and day different. Other than those two characters, though, again, we are talking about the best of the best here. I'm really not sure who else you could bring. You know, maybe Gin, Chojuro, Safui Retsu might be decent substitutes, but they're definitely not going to be my first two picks here. If you don't have Bambietta, if you don't pull for Bambietta, Chojuro and Ichibe are going to be your best picks here as far as technique melee characters do go. What we can look at, though, is maybe a ranged technique of Rank Killer. And in that case, you know, Rankiku might be okay to bring, but Aizen might be your best character to bring here if you don't have the other two characters I mentioned, right? Because the thing with Aizen, he's a normal attack damage character. His damage output's very high. He has a boost SA2 with the barrier to keeping your team safe, giving your team more damage. But because he is a normal attack damage character, his damage output is very consistent. He's going to constantly inflict weakening, therefore get the 80% attack boost. So even though he is a range character and he isn't getting the melee damage output ×2 damage buff, so even though he's a range character, and he isn't getting the 2 times melee damage buff, I think he still might be worth bringing. The killer effect is relatively high, being at 8 times, so it's definitely worth trying to bring him. You know, he might not be the best character. Our options here, unfortunately, are limited, but he might honestly be the best we have right now. So yeah, other than Bambietta, who of course is going to be a really good character to bring here, she has also a really high damage output, Frenzy 2, increased chance to inflict lacerate and also paralysis, 80% SP boost. While she doesn't have Poise Break, no other character other than 8th Anniversary Ichigo does have. Whenever the Poise enemies spawn in, they're going to be instantly paralyzed and take constant DOT, damage over time, from the lacerate. We saw with Lisa how good she was in Limit Breaker. Well, Bambietta is going to be basically that, but significantly better, while also having a really high damage output. And of course, the special part about Bambietta is that after getting 25 enemies defeated, she will then give your entire team, regardless of their killer effect, 25% more killer effect. And that, of course, is going to pair very well with someone like Mugetsu, a character you also want to use in the team, who's giving your team 20% more strong attack damage. Speaking of Mugetsu, though, if we have a look at slot number 2, we want to bring a power character, they want to have Hollow Killer, and they also want to be a melee character. In this case, these are options. Of course, as already mentioned, the best in slot for slot 2 is Mugetsu, giving your entire team 20% more strong attack damage. He's immune to every statism, and he's going to be a very fast character with Sprinter Free and also Long Strides. And of course, as already stated, you know, in our showcase when we tried him out, very high damage output with Frenzy 2, good Berserker value, high spiritual pressure boost when you do inflict a status limit at 100%. If you do decide to use your Soul Bomb, you're applying weakening. You're doing 40% more damage to weakened enemies, which overall, because weakening does give you a 50% damage buff, it's 90%. And you also have weakened defense too. You have your increased chance. The only bad thing about him is that he doesn't have Debilitator, so when you are applying weakening, it's only going to last 2 seconds. So you don't have a long time to take advantage of that 90% more damage, but it shouldn't be that bad, and at the very least, it will allow him to constantly reapply the SP boost, right? At no point will all the enemies be weakened, and then your SP boost wears off, and you have to wait like 5 extra seconds to reapply it. You're basically going to be constantly reapplying that SP boost every 2 seconds almost, or at least the second the SP boost does wear off. Other than Ichigo, honestly, your only other good character here, but to be fair, a lot of people do have him, maybe Max Transcended, is Yamamoto, right? Starting to show his age a tad bit, but still really respectable damage output here. Frenzy 1, 80% SP boost, good Berserker value. And then, of course, you are doing more damage to weakening and burned enemies, weakened defense, bombardment on the Soul Bomb. At the very least, while he might be the slowest character in your team if you are using him, his Soul Bomb does make up for it, right? His Soul Bomb still hits very, very, very hard. And especially if you have him Max Transcended, because he has been in the game for quite some time. He's been sought after for basically the last 3 years, 2.5 years more so. That Soul Bomb might one-shot, right? And that might allow you to get through a stage a lot faster, which gives you maybe more time to use your other characters and get to the highest stage possible. But don't have those two characters, well, your next best option is just to bring a melee power character. In this case, doors really don't open up. Like, I was going to say maybe use another character, but generally there's no other character to use other than Yama and also Mugetsu. Again, power's not really in the best position right now. Maybe what you could do instead is bring a ranged power Hollow Killer, and not like there's that many other characters to bring, but 8th Anniversary Ichigo might be a decent character here. The main thing about him is that he's a safe but kind of slow character, to be fair, but he has Frenzy Free, he has an increased chance to inflict weakening and also drain, and then he also does have Poise Break with a Tracking Vortex SA Free. So that'll basically ensure that the Poise enemies, when they do spawn in, you just have them locked into a vortex, and you won't have to worry about wasting time trying to damage all of them. If they're split apart, they're all going to be sucked into the vortex. So yeah, realistically for slot 3, it's either Mugetsu, 8th Anniversary Ichigo, or 1000 year Blood Dwarf Yamamoto. Now, as always, slot 3 is going to be the flexible slot, but then again, not entirely, because they do want you to bring a ranged character, so you do kind of want to meet the rule here just to get that extra damage output. And since the enemies are speed, let's have a look at our ranged technique killers here. Again, as already stated, the best character you probably can bring since you are forced to bring a technique character in slot 1 is Renewed Ichigo, the Quincy version, right? He doesn't have killer, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. He is at the very least getting that 2 times damage output, and his damage output's good as is, right? Frenzy 2, giving your team a 20% strong attack damage buff. Although, keep in mind, this won't stack with Mugetsu's. It'll be either or, right? But Frenzy 2, 80% SP boost. But most importantly, again, as I stated, he is giving you the recharge in between stages, allowing Bambietta or whatever other character you are using slot 1 to basically spam their strong attacks. So he's definitely going to be the most ideal character in slot 2. Other than that, as far as technique characters do go, you can maybe get away using Rangiku. At the very least, she will be immune to the status element on the floor that is burned, and she also will heal your team by 20% in case you do potentially take a tad bit damage. Aizen, of course, is going to be a great character here. He is a ranged character overall. If you aren't using him in slot 1 and you don't have Renewed Ichigo, Aizen's going to be really good in slot 3. Really good in slot 3. Maybe it's still worth bringing Ichibe in slot 3 if you aren't using him in slot 1. He does have Quincy Killer, so he will be getting a tad bit more damage against the Quincy enemies. Not a ranged character, though, keep that in mind. But if you are working with what you got, he might be a decent substitute more so. But if we overall just look at our ranged characters, what other characters we can bring that stand out? Not really anyone, to be fair. Like, I was maybe thinking bringing Kyoge or Yuha, but they're midi characters. They might still be worth bringing, truth be told. They are self-sufficient as far as characters do go, right? You know, sure, they aren't getting the range damage output, and they aren't even getting killer, but they are recovering their strong attacks in between stages, and in the case for Yuha, he is giving you that extra sub-bomb, which might help you clear a stage in slot 1 or slot 2 a tad bit faster. So overall, as I already stated at the start of the video, I think the best thing that you can bring here is definitely going to be Bambietta in slot 1, Mugetsu in slot 2, and then of course Quincy Ichigo in slot 3. If you don't have Bambietta, your next best characters are going to be either 1000 year Blood War Ichibe, Safui Toshiro, or maybe, just maybe, 1000 year Blood War Aizen. In slot 2, if you don't own Mugetsu, well, in that case, best bring someone like 1000 year Blood War Yamamoto, or maybe at worst case scenario, 8th anniversary Ichigo. And then slot 3, realistically, maybe bring any ranged character, but ideally 1000 year Blood War Aizen, or of course, Quincy Ichigo. So yeah, that basically wraps up this Limit Breaker video in terms of the best characters to bring. I think this one might be a tad bit difficult, I'm not gonna lie. Slot 2 should be relatively easy. A lot of people, I'm assuming, maybe has access to 1000 year Blood War Yamamoto, maybe 8th anniversary Ichigo. But then again, Mugetsu as a character is the cheapest character to ever pull for. Guaranteed, right? Because we've never had a character as good as him be guaranteed in 10 steps. Characters of his level, you have to go to step 25 at most if you get super unlucky. Bambietta in slot 1, obviously if you pull for her, gonna be good there, but you know, maybe you're not pulling for her. She's a seasonal character. She'll be back in 3 months' time. Anniversary's coming up, right? I know I'm not going too deep in the end of month banner, but since realistically there's no good melee or bronchi killer in the technique attribute, we have to resort to other characters. Ichibe, 1000 year Yamamoto, Safui Toshiro, for example. And then slot 3, I'm gonna be relatively fine. Quincy Ichigo has been quite available, should be good enough. But I don't like the range damage roll being here, because usually I would just bring someone like, you know, Kyoge or Yuha. Either way, though, this is the team that I plan to bring for this upcoming Limit Breaker quest, assuming I don't pull Bambietta. Let me know what team you'd like to plan to bring in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and peace.